Good afternoon, folks. I'm going to start off a bit different here. One of the nicest things in the world you can drink. A little tipple of this. It's Sandy here, by the way, and I'm going to be doing 2 shots as well. At some point, right, splashed a little bit, what a waste. Right, cheers. So, I'm going to be talking about, that's the stuff of the gods, isn't it? Richard Lehman books. And I'm on to book number 13 now on my list. I'm a bit low down there. Doesn't matter. Number 13 on my list, so we're almost there, we're getting there. In my retrospective look back at all 37, I think it is, books that I've been reviewing from the Richard Lehman series. And at number 13, I have chosen, I think the first book they actually got a Bram Stoker nomination for. I don't think it won a Bram Stoker award, but it was certainly nominated for it. And it's his 1987 novel, Flesh, which, again, is similar to One Rainy Night, although that came later, and very similar to books like Bane by Joe Donnelly, massively underappreciated author. I'll be talking about his very small collection of works another time. Great writer. In particular, James Herbert with The Fog and The Dark, that sort of stuff where there's an external force that compels people to do horrendous, nasty things to each other. And Flesh is another one of those books whereby an unknown entity, in this case a sort of amorphous sort of worm-like blob that infests its human hosts and compels them to do, well, hideous things. Now, Flesh is different in compared to, say, One Rainy Night. Firstly, it's not trying to be political. There's no subtext here. Secondly, this is a very well-constructed novel. And I thought One Rainy Night was a fairly well-constructed novel in how it all comes together. But Flesh showcases a remarkable degree of skill and craft in how it forms as a complete work. I've read elsewhere people saying that Flesh was probably the first big leap that Lehman made as an author in terms of how his story is constructed, how it flows. I'm not sure I agree with that, because I think all of Lehman's early works were very slight and very simple. It wasn't until he released Funhouse that he produced a particularly big book. That was his first 500 plus page novel. But I actually think that Out of the Lights is, considering that was only, I think, his third novel, that is, short as it is, a very well constructed and well planned book. I also think The Beast House is probably the first leap he made as an author, and we'll get to that in due course, in terms of how well constructed the story is compared to his early works. But this certainly is, again, it's an early Lehman book in that sense. It's before his period of greatness, really, but it's at the starting point with The Beast House and Flesh. We're really at the start of where Lehman started to produce very good, effectively what people term splatterpunk horror novels. I'm not a huge fan of the phrase, but that's really what they are. Very gruesome, short, fast-paced, exciting books, and Flesh certainly covers that. So it's about an entity that infests human hosts. It's got a particularly great opening sequence, which reminded me a lot of the sort of stuff that James Herbert did back in the day. It's got a very Herbert-esque quality to it. And then we've got this sort of procedural bit with this policeman who's trying to investigate why people are going crazy, and he eventually comes onto the understanding that there is a being of unknown origin. We never really find out where it's from or what it is. It's some sort of alien being, but that's basically taken over human bodies and trying to get them to commit horrendous deeds. And unusually for Lehman, this book, I don't think this book has got any sexual content. At least there's no graphic rape scenes. There's no. I don't think there's any sex in the book. None that I can remember, anyway. There might be some. I think there's a bit where somebody goes to do it, but I don't think there's any actual sex in the book at all. which is unusual for Layman. The book has got a lot of pace to it. It's a very fast-paced book with some decent written characters and lots of tension. Some really well-made scenes here. The way in which it starts off with the farmhouse and the husband and wife characters, and the way that this entity ingratiates itself into their lives is quite well done. It's got a decent ending as well, with characters you generally care about. There's a bit in it in which I thought Layman was going to go to a really dark place involving a child, and he doesn't. He makes you think that, but he doesn't go there. And in a rare moment for Layman, he actually shows a degree of compassion and skill in terms of how he crafts this story, in terms of what's going to happen. It's got a good ending. It's got some likable characters. I quite like Flesh. I think it's a really well written, really well paced, well made book. And this is really the starting point now on this list with these 13 books, where I've mentioned before that the last few books have all been pretty solid. They've all been decent books, well worth your time. Flesh, I think, is the first book on this list that I would actually go as far as to say that isn't merely a good book. I think it's a very good book, bordering on great for a horror novel. If you're going to compare this to the works of other authors like Stephen King, obviously this is nowhere near that level. But Layman didn't write on that level. He set out to entertain on a very pulpy, simplistic but pure horror aspect. And this is a horror novel. It's also unusual in that it has effectively a creature to it, although it's people ultimately doing things to people. It's a creature. I don't think that it quite goes as far as I thought it might do in terms of the nastiness, especially considering that this gives Layman free rein to really throw in some horrendous stuff, and he doesn't. I thought that, say, Herbert's The Dark or The Fog, which predated this by a considerable amount, were both far more violent books. I think this is, dare I say, a better book than either of those. It's a better constructed, more suspenseful book. It's one of the stronger books of this people driven to do terrible things type that I can remember reading. I definitely say this is one of the first genuinely really very good, bordering on great books that Layman that did. Certainly, it's a number 13 on this list, but this is for me elevated considerably higher than anything previously that I've talked about. And from this point on, we only continue that path with a slow but very steady increase in quality as we go. So that's Flesh from 1987. There's not really much more to say about it. It's a very simple book, but I'd rather you read it for yourself than had anything really spoilt. But I think it's well constructed. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a nice example of Layman kind of pulling his punches, but still creating a really good dark horror story, which has got a very sort of cinematic movie-esque vibe to it. So on that note, I say cheers. That's Flesh from 1987, and I'll have more when I get time.